morning, everyone. I'm Kelly Domrose. It's a pleasure to be here again. I love coming here and teaching the seminars and going over lots of different programs with you, so it's a pleasure to be back. I'm back in Hanover schools right now as well. I work in my daughter's school, but I was a teacher for 15 years. I taught middle school for 10, and then I was an instructional technology resource teacher in the elementary schools for 5. So now I'm at my daughter's school, but I am an iPhone person. I have an iPhone, an iPad, a Mac. I love Apple. I'm a big Apple person. So today I'm going to show you some of the basic features of the iPhone. I have an iPhone 6S Plus. So I have the big one, but it's a couple generations old. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit. First, I don't know how many of you may have heard the whole drama with Apple slowing down the phones because of the older model phones. So this year only, they're offering a battery replacement for $29. So if you find that your phone is not holding a charge, it is normally like $79. I think right now they're charging $29 to replace your battery for this year. But that's only in models 6 and newer. So if you have a 5 or a 5S, it's not going to apply to you, but if you have a 6 or newer, you can get a new battery. That's probably what I'm going to end up doing very soon. So come on in, have a seat. So I'm going to go over some basic features today and explain some of the information about the iPhone. If you do have questions, please wait till the end. If you have a specific problem with your phone, I'll be happy to look at that after the session has ended. So if we have a general question at the end that will benefit everybody, that's perfect. But if you do have one little specific question about your phone, I'm happy to look at that at the very end. All right, so hopefully this won't shut off too much. All right, so as I said, I have a 6S Plus. So mine's a bigger phone. It's a little older. It is not holding the charge it once did, but it's still perfectly suited to all the needs that I have personally. So our iPhone, of course, is set up with apps that you download from the App Store. Some are preloaded, come with the phone when you first purchase it. The one thing I will say is that you want to make sure that your software is always as up to date as possible. Right now, it's iOS, that's called the operating system, 11.2, I think even another 0.2. And you want to make sure that it's up to date because that will secure your iPhone. And there is a virus, there's something out there right now that's attacking the phones and Macs, any iPad, phone, Mac, so you want to make sure your security is as up to date as possible. And you can see that I currently have an update that I need to do when I get home. And that's just provides a security update and is recommended for all users. So the operating system is iOS 11, but they will start coming out with little updates periodically as they find bugs, as they find security problems, they will come out with updates. But generally they launch a new operating system when you have a new phone launched. And you know, just recently they launched the iPhone 8 and the iPhone X, that kind of anniversary. The main difference between the two, the iPhone 8 looks very similar to the 6 and 7. It has a home button, just like mine does. This is the home button down at the bottom. The iPhone X does not have a home button. The whole screen that you see is screen. There's no frame really around it with the iPhone X. And you operate it just a little differently, like Siri for the home button on Siri. For my phone, I press and hold the home button and that launches Siri. If you want to use it on the iPhone X, you would press and hold the power wake button and that would launch Siri on that phone. So most of what I'm going to go over is going to apply to the 6, 7, 8, even 5. But the X has a few different features that I do have listed on here that I will talk about a little bit. It's got a superior camera to my phone. It's got a much better camera, but I think between the 8 and the X, the biggest differences are you have the full screen and you also have with the X the facial recognition. So instead of having to use your fingerprint with the iPhone X, you just hold your phone up and it sees your face and it lets you into the phone.
Oh boy.
I did hear, though, a couple of reports of problems with it. The one issue was that children who look a lot like their parents were able to unlock their parents' phones. So parents weren't too thrilled about that, but so far it seems to be working for the most part. All right, so on your iPhone, as you well know, you've got two cameras. You have the home button down here. You have the sleep and wake button on the side, and then the volume buttons here on the side. Those are your main features. If you just press the home button, that is going to get you to the main screen. So if I press the home button and I'm on, you'll notice down here I've got several pages of apps. Too many. I turned it the other direction. I need to lock that. I have several pages of apps, and I'm on right here the 5th page of apps. If I want to get back to the main page of apps, I just press the home button and it's going to take me back to my primary screen. So keep in mind that you want to have the apps on the front that you use most often. Like my daughter pesters me every day. What's lunch going to be today? So I have a link directly right here on this screen. Now, I created this. This is not an app that I downloaded from the App Store. If you have a website that you go to frequently, you can create a shortcut that looks like an app on your phone. So that is a possible thing to do if you want to not have to type in a website every time, but you go to it frequently. So this is not an app that I downloaded in the App Store. It's a website that I go to for my daughter's school. So of course, this is the red up here. That's a badge that tells you how many. Right now I have 3 unread text messages. I'm famous for reading them and then forgetting to respond. So I usually try to leave them like this until I have a chance to actually respond. This is the dock. These apps stay, of course, stationary regardless of which page you're on. And then you've got several other features, things that you can do quickly to navigate through the phone. All right, so first and foremost, I'm going to go through some of the basic stuff when you're on the home screen. If I swipe to the right, I'm going to see news and information, app suggestions, stuff that I typically use, weather, maps. You can control which of those you see in settings. It is possible to control those. So I got to that by swiping my finger to the right. Now if I swipe left, of course I'm going to get to all of my different apps that I have. I will tell you, I must confess, my apps are not organized. My niece had all of her apps color coordinated, so you go to the first page, they're all green, second page, they're all yellow. Like apps, you can put in folders. So if, for example, I have 2 messaging apps, and I could put those in a combined folder, which I'll show you in just a few minutes. Now, if you scroll up from the bottom, you are going to see a screen that gives you a lot of shortcuts. So this is a good way to get to basic features if you need them, like airplane mode. That means it's not going to access the internet. It's going to basically put it to sleep. The good thing about airplane mode is if you're in a place where you have remote, you don't have really good cell coverage and it kind of drains your battery. That's happened to me several times. Put it on airplane mode and that stops that from happening. And then of course we've got the Wi-Fi. This is your Wi-Fi indicator, Bluetooth. Now of course Wi-Fi here is going to be resident Wi-Fi. That's going to be your Wi-Fi here. Bluetooth is going to be for shorter range stuff. So I have a set of headphones that I can connect to my phone via Bluetooth. I connect the soundbar to my phone in front of our television at home. So if I want to listen to music, I can connect the soundbar to it. Your car, if you've got Bluetooth in your car, you can connect it to that as well. This is lock screen, which I'm actually going to turn on right now. That keeps it from rotating. So if I pick up my phone and shift it, did you see a minute ago how the screen got full with apps? That's because I rotated it and it filled the screen. So right now I'm going to lock it. I don't always do that, but I am going to. This is Do Not Disturb. What I like about Do Not Disturb is it does just that. You can set it either automatic or manual. So mine is set to not, my phone will not ring between the hours of, I think, 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. So you can set that so that if you've got your phone nearby, it's not ringing in the middle of the night. If you do get 2 or 3 phone calls in rapid succession from the same call, one after the other, it will ring through. So if my dad was to call 3 times in the span of 2 minutes, then it would come through. It would ring through.
How do you set that?
We'll go through that, and that's in settings in a minute. All right, brightness. This is your screen brightness. You're not going to see any difference down here because it doesn't affect that. But if you go, you can manually slide that up and down. Just keep in mind, the brighter your screen, the faster it's going to drain your battery. So you don't want it so bright that it drains it quickly. This is your volume. If you're listening to headphones, or if you're listening to the volume on your phone, you can turn it up there. Flashlight. And flashlight, they've actually changed it now. One of the things I like, you've got different levels of brightness now with flashlight. We didn't before. So the next one was the alarm. This is where you can set the alarm, or you can use it as a stopwatch or a timer. And the timer is really good. I have an Apple Watch too. And the timer is really good because you can set it up on your watch and then it will go off. So if you're cooking, if you need to remind yourself to do something in 15 or 20 minutes, though, you can use this timer. And you don't have to have the watch to do it. And the flashlight, you'll see, has varying levels of brightness now. So if you press and hold it, you have to press and hold the flashlight. These are your different levels. So you tap which level of brightness you want it to be, and it gets brighter. So the nice thing about that, you can see on here, see how it's getting less bright? The nice thing about that was my daughter would always pester me in the back of the car to use my flashlight to read by. And it was so bright, it would drive me crazy. Well, when they updated that new operating system, she now can turn it way down. Although I had to warn her because she did just call me on the way over here with FaceTime. She got an iPod for Christmas. So she FaceTimed me, and I said, Julia, I can't FaceTime. Don't call me in the next hour because you will see her making clay models if you do. This is a calculator, and then, of course, the camera. The nice thing is, though, you can access the camera from what's called the lock screen. If your phone is locked right here, and this is a reminder. I use Siri for reminders constantly. All you have to do is, hey, Siri, set a reminder for 9 a.m. to call the realtor. Oops. Sorry. It did. I have Hey Siri set up. It's going to do it again. If you don't want to press and hold the home button, you can go into settings and you can set up Hey Siri. And what that means is every time you say that, it's going to launch Siri. So I could be driving, which I would not. You don't want to mess with your phone driving down the road. Or I could be, if my phone was in the back and my husband was driving and I was in the passenger, I could say that, Hey Siri, and it would launch it. So then I could say, set a reminder. I use it all the time. This is a great personal assistant. Set a reminder for 9 a.m. to call the realtor. Set a reminder for example, I have jury duty coming up. So now I've said every Friday for the next 5 weeks, set a reminder at 8:30 to call in and see if I need to serve the next week. So it's been pivotal for me. I mean, it's made a huge difference for me using it as a personal assistant. Keep in mind, though, that it's going to remind you of whatever you want it to remind you to at the time you say. So if you have a 10 o'clock doctor's appointment, don't tell her to remind you at 10 o'clock because that's when you need to be there. So if it takes you half an hour, make sure you tell her to remind you at 9:30 or 9 o'clock to make to your doctor's appointment. And I'm usually pretty specific with my reminders. I'll say, remind me at 9:30 that I have a 10 o'clock appointment or something along those lines. And you want to be specific about the day. So I will say, remind me on January 17th or remind me tomorrow or today. So it's a great feature. I use it all the time. So you can see when I get my lock screen up, it's going to have my reminders right there. So I've opened it back up, but from the lock screen, one of the things I wanted to show you that's important is you can launch your camera from the lock screen. So if you drag your finger to the left, that launches your camera. So you can see I've got it on there. The reason they did that, of course, is because if you're trying to take pictures, we all know how we can, especially in the moment, we'll start fumbling, and you can pick up your phone and trying to launch the camera, and that will take too long. So if you are on the lock screen, turn it on, swipe to the left, and it opens the camera. That's not going to unlock your phone. So that doesn't mean that somebody could pick up and start searching through your phone. All that's going to do is launch the camera, so you can take video or pictures. So if you've got something that you want to do quickly, you can go through and do it that way. All right. I have a tendency to go fast, so I'm trying to slow down. I apologize if I go too quickly. You can definitely tell me to slow down if I need to. All right, so of course you have, Apple sets up all of their information in apps. If you want to maneuver your apps, it's easy to do. You press and hold on an app until they all start shaking. Now, of course, some of them you're going to see X's on, others you won't. The ones that you don't see X's on are apps that you cannot delete. Now, you can hide them. My friend updated her phone last week, and she was missing the App Store, and we had to go into settings and turn those apps back on. But they were still there. You cannot delete settings, you can't delete the App Store or you can delete iTunes Store. You can't delete Photos or Safari. After a while, if you don't do anything with it, they're going to stop shaking. Now you can do several things with them. You can place them into folders or you can delete them. If I want to delete an app, I just click on the X and it's going to ask me to verify, to either cancel or delete the app. If I want to move my apps into folders, I can press one app, hold it on top of the other app, and it will put them in a folder. So you'll see now it's in the productivity folder. Okay, so you just, I'll tell you what, whoops, let me cancel. Let me get out of there. Show you that. All right, so to put them in folders, you press the app till it's moving, you can move it around, and you set it on top of another app, right on top of it, and it creates a folder. So it puts them in there. Now, I don't necessarily want this to be productivity, so I can click this X. See at the top where it says productivity? I can click the X next to it, and I can name the folder whatever I want. So if I have weather apps or calendar apps, multiple apps that do one thing, then I can do that there. I can easily add them into a folder and put them in there. All right, but there are some occasions where you want your apps back out of the folder. You don't want them in a folder. So if I open the folder, I press again till they start shaking, and then I move the app out of the folder and set it back on my screen. But you'll notice that even though there's only one app, it still kept the folder in there. So that means I have a two-step process to go into that app from now on. Click on that, and then I have to click on the app. If you don't want to do that, you just press and hold again till it's shaking, and then you bring that app out as well, and it eliminates the folder and puts your app back on the screen. Yes?
How do you get them to stop shaking?
They'll stop shaking after a second, or you can press the home button. If you press the home button, they'll stop shaking.
Okay.
And I'm forever. I look down and my apps are shaking. I do that all the time. I don't know how. Holding my phone, picking it up in my purse, somehow they start shaking. So folders are nice, though, if you want to group different types of apps or group the same types of apps in one folder. I've done that here. I've got 3 apps that are all the same company in one folder. Okay.
What button do you push to make it shake?
You just, any app, just press and hold any app. Doesn't matter which one, press and hold any. Now, okay, one thing I need to caution you about though, when I say press and hold, you don't want to press down hard because it's got that haptic pressure touch. So your apps are going to respond differently depending on how much pressure you apply to them. So if I just tap it, it's going to launch the app. If I press and hold it gently, it's going to cause it to shake, where I can delete the app. If I press and hold it firmly, it's going to give me some other options for that app. So that's 3 different things I can do with the same app just by the type and amount of pressure I apply with my finger. So the first thing I did, again, if I just tap it gently, tap and leave, that's my launches the app. If I press gently and hold, it's going to cause them all to shake, and if I wanted to delete it, I could press the X in the top left corner and either cancel or delete it. If I press firmly, it's going to give me some other options to either search, write a post, and obviously those options are going to be specific to the app. These are all specific to Facebook. So these are all things that I would do: scan a QR code, upload photo, video, that kind of thing. If I was to press and hold Shazam, I'm going to get different options. That is a music recognition app, Shazam. If you don't know what that is, if you haven't used it before. So if you hear a piece of music, something you want to know what it is, you press and hold that, it listens to it, and it'll tell you what it is. So I use that all the time, especially in movies. I'm like, what is that? I've got to know what that is. Which is very difficult to do when you're trying not to pull your phone out in the movies because of the bright screen. So anytime you press on an app and hold it, it's going to give you options specific to that app. So again, there are 3 different things you can do with it. You can launch it, you can delete it, or you can get the different shortcuts to it. All right. Now if I drag from the top down, from the bottom up, I have some of those basic shortcuts. If I go from the top down, you've got notifications. So the top notification is my reminder. Then I have text messages, any kinds of, look at that, why Wednesday's snow could make roads more icy than our last one did. So this is going to just give you all kinds of notifications that have come through your phone. You can get to those. So you know how they have drop-in sometimes from the top, or they'll pop up on the screen? If you missed it but you wanted to know what it was, if you drag your finger down, you'll be able to see what the notifications were. And of course, the most recent notifications are going to be near the top. You can clear those. There's an X right there where it says earlier today to the right of it. There's an X. I click on that and I say clear, and it's going to clear all of today's notifications. It's going to clear yesterday's, Saturday, so you can clear. Again, I don't typically do that just because that's time I don't want to spend. Of course, have you ever seen on Facebook where they say which type of person are you? Are you the one with 0 messages in your inbox, or are you the one with 15,000 messages for your email? Well, clearly I'm not the 0 person. You can see I have 2,956 emails unread. Most of those are just junk mail, so I'm not the 0 person. So I'm not going to go out and clear my notifications very often. But another thing I wanted to point out is what you can do to close an app. Let's say I have an app that is music. I want to close it. I want to shut it down so that it's not running in the background. If you double click quickly the home button right here, press it twice, 2 times quickly, you will see all of the apps that you've recently had open. If you swipe up, it closes that app. All you have to do is swipe up and it will close that app. Exciting stuff right there, isn't it? And I have lots of apps open. I am famous for opening a million apps. Once you're done with that, if I try to double click the home button, it doesn't have any apps to close. So it's just going to go back to the main screen. But if I want to close an app, that's the quickest way to do it. You just double click and swipe up and it will close that app for you. So it's not running in the background. I will do that frequently, especially now, because you've noticed We are 25 minutes in and my batteries are down to 86. So it won't die before the end of the hour, but you want to try to do as much as you can to keep it going. There's stuff running behind in the background. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to take a look at is settings. That's the gearbox right there. The gear settings right here. That's where you can really customize your phone and make it do some of the stuff you want it to do. So here is the very top information. That's going to be my information, my name, phone numbers, email, everything that I've got set up in there. Payment, I do have it set up. I don't typically use Apple Pay. You know, you can use Apple Pay to go and just touch your phone to the, I guess, the checkout stand and it will pay for you. I try to be careful about that because for me personally, if it's too easy, it's too easy. And then I'm easily spending because I can just tap my phone and get this. All right, so then down here you're going to see all the different devices that I have connected. So you'll see the phone, the watch, the iPad, and the MacBook Air. All of those are connected to my phone. I can turn, just like a computer, there's more than one way to do just about everything. So when I swipe up from the bottom in the control center, you'll see that I said there was airplane mode up there. Well, you can turn it on here as well. It's not necessary to go in here and do it because I've got it in the control center, but I can turn it on there. Now when you click on Wi-Fi, right now I'm connected to the resident Wi-Fi, but every single option that's within range is going to pop up. You'll notice one that says guest. Of course, that doesn't require the password. If it has a padlock next to it, it requires a password. So generally what you're going to see, these are people who have their own Wi-Fi set up in their home, and it's connected me to it, or it's showing me those. But if they have, of course, the lock, you've got to sign into it anyway. So my home network isn't showing up right now because I'm not at home. So it's only going to pick up what's around you. I do not recommend doing anything in a public place on public Wi-Fi that you want to keep secure. Like I wouldn't go to Panera and do my banking on their open Wi-Fi. I would keep it on my network. I would do it on my network using my data, but I wouldn't do that with the Wi-Fi. But anytime you don't have the Wi-Fi enabled, you are going to be using your data. So this shows me that I am connected to the Wi-Fi right now. Right here, these little things right here. That shows me I'm connected to the Wi-Fi. This is my network. You can see Verizon is my network, and then I've got these towers that tells me how strong my connection is. But the Wi-Fi is going to override the network. So if I was to watch a video, for example, on my phone right now, it would not go into my data because I'm connected to the Wi-Fi. If I was to go out somewhere and not connect to Wi-Fi, then it is going to go into my data. And I can tell you that streaming video uses the most data. That's going to really quickly run down your data. And then of course up here at the top I've got the clock. I have the lock rotation on, which is why you see the little padlock with the arrow around it, because you can't turn my phone and change the screen right now. Bluetooth, this is called location services. That's going to let my phone know where I am. So if you want to use GPS like Google Maps, then you need to have location services enabled so that it knows where you are, so that it can find where you are. Or if you go into shopping and you want to find something, you'll need to have location services on if you need to find something nearby. And I use that all the time, all the time. My dad the other day had a heart procedure, and the pads left a mark, and he was very uncomfortable. So I was looking for some spray to kind of numb it, and location services was on, and I shopped. I looked in Safari, found a location and clicked on nearby and found it at Walgreens. So I didn't have to call around or drive all over the place. I could just find it, went to Walgreens and got it. So it is handy to use, to have it on there. And then, of course, my battery power is right here. That's going to tell me how much battery I have. I have the percentage on. You don't have to turn on percentage. I like to have percentage on, but you don't have to turn it on if you like a little cleaner. I will show you that, the question was, how do you turn it on? I'll show you that. I'm going to go down some of the main features here. Okay, so under airplane mode, Wi-Fi, my Bluetooth is on. When I have, these are all of the different things that my Bluetooth, or that my phone is paired to. So my phone is paired to my Mac, my Apple Watch, our sound bar, and my daughter's little Fitbit. I can pair it to my wireless headphones too and listen to it. But right now you'll see it's not connected to any of these. If I click on the information next to it, it's either going to tell me I can connect to it, or it may pick it up, or it can ask me if I want to forget the device, and I can take it off of there. I have found, for example, with my headphones that they won't pair to more than one device at a time. I cannot connect them to my iPad and my iPhone. So if I just click forget this device, it takes it out, and that would clear that whole thing out of there. But if you have a car that has Bluetooth, you would see it in here too as devices. I paired it to my sister's car one time, and it said up there Mazda. So that's where you can go in to connect it. So if it's not picking up, if it's not connecting, if you go into Bluetooth, if you click on Bluetooth again, if you go into Bluetooth, if it says not connected, but you're within range, you should be able to connect it there. It shouldn't be a problem. If you click on it, it'll allow you to connect it. So if you have a problem with that, that's where you need to go in to look at that. Underneath the Bluetooth, we have cellular. That's really not a major deal. And then personal hotspot. This allows you to use your phone as a kind of a Wi-Fi station for another device. For example, my iPad is not networked. It's only Wi-Fi. If I wanted a bigger screen, but I was out in public, I could use the data from my phone to power my iPad to get on the internet. Again, it's going to use your data to do that, but I could connect it to my phone. So that's what's called a personal hotspot. And then notifications, this is going to be anything that pops up on the screen. So if you don't want an app to give you notifications, you can turn that off there. So for example, Auntie Anne's pretzels allow notifications. So if I get a new coupon or something, it's going to pop up on my screen. If I don't want that, I can just turn it off, and it's not going to allow notifications. So you might want that if you don't want repeated notifications coming in, dropping down all the time, you can turn that off right there. Do not disturb is what I showed you before. This, though, is where you can go in. So you'll see that I have it scheduled from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. every night. Nobody can call through unless they do the repeated calls. So you can allow calls, though, from certain people. So when in do not disturb, allow incoming calls from your favorites. So anybody in my favorites list could call me and it would ring through. My dad, my sister, anybody like that could call in and it would ring through. Repeated calls, a second call from the same person within 3 minutes will not be silenced. So if somebody calls you and they need to call you, they need to really get in touch with you, if they call you again within 3 minutes, it will ring. So that's the good thing about do not disturb. So you're not going to get a random solicitation or something late, and I've been surprised before how late they call. You're not going to get a random solicitation, and you can set that time whenever you want it to be. You could set it for 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. so that the phone calls don't come through. Doesn't start dinging and carrying on for you. And then of course you've also got auto reply. You can do that too. It auto replies to someone if you're driving. If you have that enabled, if your location services is on, if it knows you're driving, if the phone knows you're driving, it can tell people, I'm sorry, I'm driving right now, I can't respond to your message.
Where is that?
That is under Do Not Disturb down here, auto reply. It's your favorites will receive this message when they text you. Now under General, you'll notice that I have a badge with the 1. That's because I have a software update that I need to do, and I'll do that later on when I get home and get connected. If you need to know about your phone, if you click on About right there at the top, It's going to tell you the name of the phone. It's also going to give you the network, your network. I need to clean out my photos. I have 5,875 photos on here. I have found a great way if I'm getting up there a little bit and I'm finding smaller print harder to read when I'm at the grocery store or something. If you don't have your glasses and you can't see it very well, if you take a picture of it, you can zoom in. You can pinch zoom on the picture and you can read it easier. I found that out recently. All right, so it tells you also how big, your capacity. So I have a 64 gigabyte phone, and available I have 17 basically gigabytes left. So that tells me if my phone's starting to fill up, if I'm starting to get notifications, I need to go in and delete or remove some stuff. All of this is not really that necessary, but if you were to call Apple or to go to Apple and they needed to know the model number or the serial number, that's where that's going to be located. Under About.
How do you get to about?
If you go in Settings, if you go to General, General is going to be the general information, and go to About. Under About is your software update. So right now it's checking for an update. I do have an update, 11.2.2, because that's going to be the security stuff that I need to update. I generally keep my updates as current as possible. The one thing to keep in mind, when you do update, a whole new operating system is usually going to take up more space. Like I just updated the operating system on my computer and it nearly filled my computer. So just keep in mind that it is going to take up some space. Okay, I'm not going to go over your job right now.
Do you have to accept the new update?
You don't have
Is
to.
it not better than the one you're using? I mean, sometimes it changes things, right?
It does. If it's a whole new, typically what it is, if it's a whole new operating system, it changes things. If it's, when you start to see stuff like this, like iOS 11 was the new operating system. Now I'm seeing, you see the 0.2, yeah. That's going to be bugs and fixes that people have found if they've got a problem, or security updates. You want to keep it as secure as possible. For this one, I'm going to apply this update because it's a security update. Sometimes they'll find that an app won't work correctly, an app will keep crashing, a popular app, or it'll cause a glitch that will do something, and so they'll find those and they'll send those patches through. But generally, they release a major operating system update when they release a new phone. That's usually about the time they do that. And of course, the older your phone model, the less efficient it's going to work. So that's why that's one of the things they said. They slow your phone down to preserve the battery is what they've said. And that's why they're offering the cheaper battery replacement right now. Okay, so I'm going to skip down a little bit.
Please. Turn my phone off. I can't get rid of the background music stuff.
Okay, I'm going to just close your apps. Well, I don't know. I've turned the volume down for now, and we'll look at it afterwards. Okay, so I've got enable restrictions is next. You may not need enable restrictions. That's just if you don't want people, like I might use enable restrictions for my daughter because I wouldn't want her in there doing some stuff. One of the things that I did that's really nice is I was able to, her iPod, every time she wants to download an app, it has to be approved by me on my phone. So I see it, it pops up and I see it. So I like that so I know what she's downloading. But you can restrict some of the apps if you want to enable restrictions. Put in my passcode, oh my goodness, 3,000 times. And now I could turn off, like, I could turn off some restrictions for certain ones. I'm going to disable it though.
When the green is on, that means that there are restrictions or no restrictions?
Well, if it says enable, there are no restrictions right now. If it says disable, then I've got it on. But I could turn them off on certain apps. I could be app specific with them.
When you've got the green on, that means that the restriction is there?
Yes. So I'm turning off the restriction for Safari right now.
And the restrictions
Uh,
are based on,
It's going to be, let me see if it says, ratings. If you go down, allowed content, it's going to tell you what the content is. So like I could turn on restrictions for Safari or for TV shows, and I could change which ones can be seen. So you'll notice right there, like for me, for my daughter, I obviously would turn off TV mature, TV 14. I wouldn't want her to be able to see those. So it is a good way to go in and set some restrictions if you need to. Or if you don't want to see stuff popping up on your phone. You know, sometimes you click on stuff and you don't realize what it is, and then you're trying to, you know, get it off and you don't know. So you can set restrictions so they won't pop up either. But if I turn it off, it's going to overlook those restrictions. So down here at the bottom is where it's going to show you, if you scroll down, and it's going to apply to those. So Siri, websites. So if I click on Siri, for example, explicit language is going to be blocked, and certain web search content as well.
How did you get to restriction?
It's at the bottom, or it's at, excuse me, I'm sorry, it's under General. Think about when you want to do, a lot of what you want to do is going to be found under General. So General is under, or Restrictions is under the General tab. So if I click that on, it's going to ask you for your passcode. And then if you enable restrictions, once you go down, it's going to, you can specify what restrictions you want for those apps. And then privacy as well. You know, I can turn on or turn off location services. I mean, it's a little, you know, it's a little big brother to have to know that you're being tracked, or they know where your phone is, because it'll say all the time, it'll track and say you are at this location. But I need to have that if I want to use certain apps. I need to have location services. Okay, so we're going to move on down to date and time. You can set it to the 24-hour, I guess if you're military. Set it automatically or the time zone. You can change your time zone if you want to do that. That's under General, date and time. Now, if you have an older operating system, some of these features may look a little different. Just depends on how similar our operating systems are. Keyboard is where you can add different keyboards. So if I go to keyboards at the top, you'll notice that I have the English, United States keyboard on there. I also have the emoji keyboard. That's the one that's the little smiley faces and the thumbs up. If I don't want that, I can remove it from there. Well, the emoji I can't, but the Bitmoji I can. You can also add different keyboards. You'll notice, so if you have different language, I have a friend who's from Poland, so she added both the English and the Polish keyboards. So she's got both on there. And you'll notice too that you're able to kind of customize a little bit what you want it to do. Check spelling. Predictive basically is going to be it's going to predict what you want to say. That honestly has gotten on my nerves in the past. I have not used that so much. All right, under keyboard you have language, which is pretty basic. Dictionary, which I'm going to be using. I don't know why I actually have all these French dictionaries enabled. I'm not sure how I did that because I don't speak French very well. I can only say a few words. And you can reset your iPhone right here. This is important, so I'm going to go back to that real quickly. Under General.
I put the wrong language in, but now it won't let me change it.
Okay, we can look at it afterwards. If you go down to the bottom, before you get to shut down, you'll see reset. Reset. That is like if you want to erase your phone, if you're setting up a new phone, you're getting a new iPhone and you want to erase your phone, you can do that. Erase all content and settings, reset all the settings, you can do that as well. The network settings, the keyboard, those are your options for that. If I want to erase all the content and reset it, you can. I have a second phone at home, like this one that I was considering switching to. And if I were to do that, I would erase all the content from this phone after I was done with that. Call Verizon, have everything switched over, and then erase the content of the phone. Okay. Yes.
If you were getting rid of your phone, would that get rid of all the confidential information that you didn't want to be picked up?
Well, that's why you want to erase all settings, yes. That's why it's important when you do. Typically, if you go to the Apple store, if you go somewhere, they're going to help you go through that step. But yes, if you needed to reset, and the other important thing about that is if you have it, you can access iTunes from your computer. If somebody takes your phone, my sister set hers down on the bathroom counter one time and left it there and forgot in a restroom, and she came back 2 minutes later and it was gone, and she got on the computer and was watching it drive down the road. And then of course somebody turned it off and she couldn't find it, but she was able to erase all of the settings from her computer so that it reset it to factory settings. But that is too why you have to have the security. You've got to be able to access it or have the code to get in. Because you've got, I mean, look, accounts and passwords, you have some important information there that you don't want everyone to see. All right, so I'm going to go down. Under General, we have Display and Brightness. I just went to Wallpaper by accident. Display and Brightness. This is another place besides here. You know how you can, we've talked about how you can change your screen brightness here. You can do the same thing here, up and down. Night shift is where it automatically detects the light and it shifts it kind of to like almost an amber glow light. So it's just less harsh on your eyes. So if you were to, because I have picked up my phone in the middle of the night and looked at it and it's blinding. So if you turn on night shift, it's just a little bit, you'll see warm, less warm. It kind of changes the color of it a little bit. And so it looks more, it's less harsh on your eyes when it's dark. But one of the nice things, this is the auto lock. So after 3 minutes, my phone locks itself. So the screen will go black after 3 minutes. That way it's not staying on forever and ever. And then I've got raise to wake. That means that if my phone is set on the counter and I pick it up, it's going to wake up. It's going to not launch it. You still have to use your passcode. It's not going to open it up, but it will wake it up for you. And then this is a thing of beauty. You can change your text size right here. So if you need a bigger font, you can do it there. And then you can also enable bold text if you want it to be a little bit bolder. Okay, wallpaper is just where you can change the background. So right now I have my daughter in there from like 3 years ago. I could choose a new wallpaper and it's going to ask me if I want to choose it from oh my word, you cannot look at that selfie. I was making my sister laugh the other day and I took a picture of myself that was horrible. So you can use your information, your photos, or you can use some paper or some wallpaper they already have there. All right, this is a big one. I'm going to skip down just for a second to make sure I cover it. Touch ID and passcode. If you click on that, I have to put in my passcode in order to launch it. But what's good about it is you can put in multiple fingerprints, I think up to 5, on your home button. So a lot of times you'll set up your thumb, but if you want to just press with your index finger or your left hand, you can do that too. So you can add multiple fingerprints. I'll tell you another, I mean, it's not always recommended, but I could even put my husband's fingerprint in here too if I wanted him to. I mean, it's fine, but I mean people that you don't necessarily want to put a bunch of people in your phone. But if I wanted my husband to be able to access my phone and he doesn't remember the code, then I can just put his fingerprint in there too. You can turn passcode off. I love it. I also have passcode set up so that if I'm buying something from the App Store or iTunes Store, instead of having to type in my email address and password to verify it, I just use my thumbprint. And so it will launch it for me. And then we have sounds, going back up. This is going to give you some customized ways to have your sound setting if I want it to vibrate when it rings or if I want it to vibrate on silent. I have that off because I found sometimes when it vibrates in a quiet room, it's just as loud as if it was ringing. I mean, it's pretty loud, but you can turn that off. And then you can change your ringtone if you want to. I've still got the old ringtone. If you have the keyboard clicks every time you type in your keyboard and it click, 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 clicks, and that drives you crazy, this is where you turn it on and off down here, keyboard clicks. So you can turn that off or you can turn it on. It's totally up to you. Battery, right down here, that's where you can turn on your battery percentage, right there. Right here is where you turn on the battery percentage. And then it will also tell you about low power mode if you start to. You can turn that on and it kind of reserves it. So it puts it in reserve as well. It also tells you what apps you're using that are using the most battery life. So you can see Facebook, I've scrolled a little too much in the last 24 hours. 24%, home and lock screen 19, checking out the news 9%, messages 7. GroupMe is a text messaging app for people who don't have iPhones. I can use that because we have iMessage with an iPhone. Anytime you send a message, if the recipient has an iPhone, it's going to, and they have iMessage on, it's going to go through as blue. So if I text somebody and the message comes through green, they do not have an iPhone, so they don't have iMessage. Or they don't have it enabled. But typically, iMessage is going to be turned on if you have an iPhone. So if I text my sister, it's going to show up as blue. If I text my husband, his responses are going to come back to me in green because he doesn't have an iPhone. He's the outlier in our family. Decided he wanted to do something different. Privacy is important. This is where you can turn location services on or off. So you'll see I've got location services on right now. I can turn it off, but here's one of the things that I definitely look at. You'll notice it says location services, App Store while using, Apple Watch Faces while using. There are some apps that if you're not careful, like this one, Life 360, it's always running in the background. That is going to eat your battery if you've got apps that are always running in the background. So I'm going to click on while using the app so that it's not always going. Map my run while using the app. I don't need to have location services on all the time for some of these. Google Maps, or while using, but any of these, I do not have any of them. I try not to have any of them except a weather app. Always, because you don't want those apps always running in the background. It's not necessary for them to. So that's going to be location services where you turn it on or off, and contacts. All right, I wanted to see if there was one.
So you want to just put a while using or just?
Usually I say never or while using the app. Because always means is always running in the background.
So if it's green, then that means it's always running.
Not necessarily. If I've got, let's see, if I turn on location services, you'll notice, see I've got all my apps listed?
Yeah.
So they say either while using, so if I open the app, then it's going to enable location services for me.
Okay, so if you've got it in the green, what does that mean? It's always.
It could be. I'd have to look at it because chances.
If I turn it off,
Uh-huh.
that disables. It says here it will disable all apps.
Oh, right. Right here. You talking about that at the top?
I'm talking about where I just touch.
Yes. See, it does that too for me. If I switch, see, I leave location services on personally. I leave it on and then I go customize every single app. If you turn it off up here, it's going to turn off location services for every app, which means that your phone is not using GPS and you won't be able to use Google Maps or a GPS on your phone. You have to have location services turned on in order to use it. But you can customize when location services is being used within the individual apps. So Google Maps, for example, I have it, I don't want Google Maps always running in the background. I don't need it running in the background because I'm sitting right here right now. If I am using the app, I want Google Maps. So if I have it set to while I'm using the app, and then I go into Google Maps, that's going to automatically launch location services. So it's going to find where I am right now because I told it to. And then I can zoom in or zoom out and look at it there. I can type in my destination up there. So it will use location services if you tell it to. Now, I can double click that and swipe up, and that will close that app. And so it's not running in the background anymore. It's not doing anything. So it's not going to affect my data or my battery life. Back there. Okay, I'll see if there's one other thing.
If this Waze, for instance, is turned on,
Mm-hmm.
it's always running in the background.
It can be if the setting is like, see, I've got Waze right here. There's Waze. I have it set to allow location access to never. I can change it to while using the app so that only if I launch that app is it going to look for my location. Only if I'm using the app.
That would sound reasonable.
Yes, that's why I use while using the app or never. Because there used to be, for a lot of these apps, they would only give you the option of never or always. So if that was the default, I would use always or never, because if I needed to use that app, I don't use Waze very often, but if I needed to use it, I could just go in and turn it on. Wasn't a major deal to go in and do that. All right, so that's the basics about settings, going through. You can find just about anything you need under settings that you need to look at. You can customize most of your apps with some options. There are some occasions where apps are not updated when the phone is. There was an app that I use frequently, and a lot of people used it. I'm trying to remember which of the ones it was. Oh, it's a dictation app that the kids at the school would use on iPad. Well, they updated the new operating system, and the developer did not update the dictation app, so the app no longer worked on the new operating system. So you can run into that occasionally where it won't work anymore because of that situation. All right, so that's a lot of information. This is a handout, but you can always go back and review the video. But we are about out of time, so I want to see if you have any questions. We've got 3 minutes for any questions. Yes?
I would like to know the computer address for a manual that explains all of this stuff about this particular iPhone.
Okay. A computer manual for that. I don't know that there's an actual, there are, if you Google it, if you go into Google, there are tips and tricks and information. There may even be a book out there for it, but I'm not sure that it's necessarily going to have one website that has a manual. There is on Apple, you can get some information too, and you can
You're not sure if
find
there's
out
a
some more.
manual on the iPhone?
There's an iPhone
There-
user app.
Yes, there are apps, there are different things out there that you can use, but I don't know that it's going to be like a book, a manual that you're looking for. We can look at that. Yes.
I have a question. In my email, I'm getting a false number of the amount. Say I have 5 emails and the number showing says 12. How do I correct that?
I'll have to look at that afterwards. That's kind of a specific thing.
Okay.
I will say that there are times, though, it has to catch up, but it also depends on how many email accounts you have in there. Like I have 4 or 5 email accounts in mine, so it's not always going to match, and it depends on if they're unread or read emails, but I can look at it afterwards for a minute. Yes.
Where did you say, now, if I have a 6, it would be wise for me to go ahead and buy one of those $29 batteries?
Only if you're having problems. I'm not looking to spend money. The only reason I'm thinking about doing it is because my battery's not holding a charge anymore.
And where would you go to get that?
Apple.
Apple
Apple does
to the
it.
one at Sharp Pump?
Apple's doing it. I don't know if you have to send it in or if they're holding it, how they're doing it, because you know the Apple they don't have a removable back. They have to open up the phone to replace the battery. But I mean, I wouldn't necessarily look to spend money, but I've only had this phone 2 years, and I usually try to keep my phones about 3. My husband wants me to keep my phone about 3. I want the latest and greatest, but he doesn't subscribe to my style of thinking.
What does locked mean? How do you lock one? Just turn it off?
Yeah, if you press the power button and it goes black, and then you turn it back, but you
That's
haven't.
locked.
That's the lock screen. Yes. So it's locked and you can't get into it.
My screen keeps cutting off every 20 seconds.
We'll have to change. That's the setting. If your screen shuts down very quickly, that's under settings. So you just need to change the setting on how often it shuts down. Okay. Well, it's 11 o'clock, so I want to thank you for coming.